Before we begin, I'd like you to meet I'd like you to meet Thomas. Thomas is a first-time searcher, and he is an important storyteller. So, so meet Thomas. Thomas is a marketing executive, 35-year-old with 10 years of corporate success. Uh, he is building security, a top performer at his company. He has some in savings, but he's looking for, he's feeling stuck. He has heard about buying a business, but he's not sure, how to get started. Um, and his reality looks something like this. He has strategy meetings where ideas get watered down. He's scrolling business listings during lunch breaks. And he often says to himself, he could run a successful business, but he's not even sure where to start. So Thomas is balancing ambitious dreams with financial security, creating this tension, this polarizing tension between do I make the leap into business ownership? Um, and how do I do that? So Thomas applies what I like to call the DIY approach. He does some self-research. He downloads templates online. He reads, Buy Then Build, the HBR guide to how to buy a business. He might connect with some industry peers on some successful acquisition entrepreneurs. He listens to acquiring minds. He's doing all the right things, but he's struggling with some of the analysis. Thomas is spending nights and weekends scrolling through business listings on BizBuySell, Axial, or some of the other platforms, and he's frustrated by some of the setbacks. He feels the process is not moving fast enough. But then one day, many months into his business search, he finds his ideal business, the business that meets his buy box. So we're going to get to the buy box a little bit later, and it's his eureka moment. But now what? Does Thomas just call the listing? What does he do next? So Thomas calls the owner. The owner picks up. Imagine this. He says, "Hello." Thomas freezes. He introduces himself, mentions he wants to buy a business, but isn't sure what to say next. Thomas has spent many months searching for a business. He finds his ideal business and he freezes. A few minutes later, the business owner hangs up and Thomas never hears from him again. Thomas is crushed, but he's confident that, his ideal business is out there, but he doesn't know how to keep pushing and finding more ideal businesses. So Thomas's story is one that many of you who are looking for businesses or first-time searchers speak with me and share often. So if you are looking to buy a business, have gone through some of Thomas's motions and some of his challenges, I've met dozens of acquisition entrepreneurs like Thomas, so don't feel like you're alone or doing the wrong things. So in today's webinar, we're going to discuss finding a deal that fits you, your first step to business ownership, and some of the things you should think about when you do meet these sellers to hopefully secure a business and ultimately buy one. That is the end goal, right? So my first tip, which for those of you starting your search, is to stop planning and start doing. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Start moving forward today. Make that first call or email, network, build connections early. The reason why I often encourage searchers to stop planning and start doing is You will learn how to best approach buying a business and searching for one through repetition. I've been in the small business space for over a decade, and I directly attribute my technical expertise and knowledge in the space due to the number of deals I've done over the course of my career. Like riding a bicycle or doing anything else, you need to learn through repetitions how to speak with ownership, how to ask the right questions, how to search for businesses. So the sooner you can start your business search and stop thinking or planning about it, the better off you will be in the long run. Yes, planning is important, and establishing a set of criteria like a buy box is even more important. But some of the nuances, such as building a website and having a domain name, are less important, in my opinion. Avoiding the analysis paralysis trap is another one I wanted to call attention to. So, what is that specifically? So, picture this. You're Thomas and you're scrolling business listings. You come across a business listing which pencils to some of your ideal businesses you're looking for, but you spend the next month reviewing the broker sim. While you may know everything about this business, and that's important in some aspects, you have fallen into what is this analysis paralysis trap. And doing that often will actually hurt your business search. So let me explain why. If you review a sim for one business over the course of several weeks or months, it's very likely that business listing is gone. It's either been acquired from another prospective buyer, or the seller's taken it off market, etc. You need to move swiftly with your analysis to arrive at a decision point. The decision point should be, do I want to pursue this business listing further? Is it worth a phone call with the seller? Do I want to talk to the broker? In a matter of 1, 2, or 3 days, tops. Being quick and decisive is attributes I see in successful business searchers. So make that first call or email, set weekly goals, and avoid the analysis paralysis trap are key lessons I want you to think about going forward. So for those of you who just tuned in, as I tick through these questions, if you have uh, if you have questions about how to buy a business, things that have come up that you have questions about, feel free to throw those in the chat, and I'm going to get to those throughout the presentation, and I'll get to as many as I can. So this idea, I spoke to a few old, current business owners who I've worked with, and I asked them, if you were to go back to the start of your business search, what would you tell yourself? So fortunately, three of my old clients replied back to me, one of which I'm very close with, an owner of a commercial millwork business. He said, if I could go back to the start of my business search, I'd tell myself to focus on building relationships early. Networking with brokers and other business owners made all the difference in finding the right deal. An owner of a manufacturing company mentioned this. I'd give myself, at the start of my business search, tell myself, don't rush. Take time to thoroughly understand the numbers before committing. Lastly, an owner of an HVAC company said I'd remind myself to be persistent. The right deal will come, but it's important to stay patient and not get discouraged by early setbacks. So these three owners share one commonality and three different perspectives. They're all owners and successful acquisition entrepreneurs, but they all have different takeaways from their search and what they would tell their former self. They mentioned things like staying persistent, the right deal will come. That speaks to the business buy box. The HVAC company owner specifically was not discouraged by some early setbacks, such as broken deals and discussions which went nowhere. The manufacturing company owner said, take time to thoroughly understand the numbers before committing. So a different perspective, and one that speaks to doing more analysis up front rather than rushing into one specific business because of an urgency. So I think it's important to highlight some of these differences of best practices from people who've actually done it. So one thing I like to talk about is creating your business buy box. So the first question I'm often, when I mention this idea is, what the heck is a business buy box? Since I prefaced this and already explained it high level, the business buy box is a single set of criteria. So if you want to take out a sheet of paper, you can jot these three items down now and answer these questions later today or maybe tomorrow when you're at your desk. The business buy box looks to set criteria such as how will I pay for it? How will I pay for the business I'm looking to purchase? Will I consider using loans, outside investment, or personal savings? Who's running the business? Decide whether you yourself are going to run the business. Are you going to buy a bigger business with perhaps a management team in place? Are you going to buy a business and then hire an operator? Or do you want to manage, the day-to-day aspects of this business you're purchasing? Typically, when I speak to searchers who, I speak to a few dozen per week, they will say the following. I want to buy a business which has an operator in place so I can sit above them at the holdco level. While that's good on paper, you need to understand the implications of what that means. In reality, what that means is you're buying a larger business, so you'll need a larger SBA loan or a bank loan. You need to learn bring experience of how having to lead people. You're going to hire or manage a full-time operator. You need to understand what that looks like. So typically the searchers I work with who have this criteria and successfully buy businesses like this, they'll bring things like management experience or significant capital up front to purchase a larger business. If you don't have a large pool of capital and are targeting smaller businesses, it's helpful to mentally prepare yourself that very likely you will be the operator for a short period of time at the minimum. I spoke to a recent successful business searcher a couple weeks ago, and I asked him about this question, and he shook his head and said he wouldn't be able to sleep at night if he personally guaranteed an SBA loan and wasn't operating it day to day. That was just his opinion, but I think it's important to take into consideration some of the words he was saying when you think about who's running your business. And what type of business do I want to buy? Do I want to buy a business in a specific industry? Do I want a business in a certain location? And if I'm East Coast based, do I want to stay East Coast? Or am I conducting a search nationwide? Am I willing to move for my business, or do I have family ties in a certain region I'd like to stay in? By establishing these three simple criteria, you can better navigate prospective business listings. Now, I want you to promise something after you create your business buy box. So once you write down these three questions and answer them as honestly as possible, I want you to make the commitment to stick to these three set of criteria when you start your search. Very often I see the following. A searcher who has been searching for a business for months or maybe 12 plus months begins to loosen the criteria of the buy box. And here's some of the challenges that happen. You go under LOI and you're close to purchasing a business that falls outside your buy box. And at the last second or halfway through the process, you end up walking away from the deal. You walk away from the deal because you don't want to move or the business was too small for the type of business you would like to buy. And Unfortunately, that's a significant amount of money, likely in dead deal costs paid to lawyers, QOV providers, and bankers who helped you get to where you were during the deal. So by committing to your buy box, it helps you establish clear criteria and keeps you disciplined during your search. So as you navigate your journey, I want you to bookmark your buy box that you've created from this slide or jot it down on a piece of paper, and I want you to stick it to your monitor and make the commitment to yourself that you will stick to this going forward. So the next question I often get is, where do I find a business? The age-old question of deal flow. So I put together a helpful slide of some of the deal platforms available today. This list is subject to change, but I thought it was helpful to see some of the business listing sites such as Axial, Baton, BizBuySell, PE Marketplace, etc. Some of the fees they charge, and other deal platforms. So if you want to screenshot this or save this on your desktop, I think it is important because deal flow is a question I get all the time. So one thing to pay attention to when it comes to deal platforms is a lot of these sites are aggregators and don't have proprietary deal listings. I don't own a deal platform company. I don't know specifics around how each of these operate, so take this with a grain of salt. But I have seen listings on BizBuySell, which also appear on some of these other sites. BizBuySell is completely free. I do list a BizBuySell Edge, which is probably their premium membership, but if you compare it to like an Axial, it's actually quite affordable. There are many ways to source deals through your own outreach, which is really just your own time and effort to finding deals, as well as you could hire a buy side broker, etc. These are just some options. So what is your biggest, let me see if I can launch another polling question. So I'd love to hear, why do you think deals fall apart? What is the most common reason deals fall apart in the last week before closing? So for those of you on the live stream, the question was, what is the most common reason you've seen your deal fall apart or heard of deals falling apart in the weeks right next to closing? Financing issues, working capital, seller backing out. I'd love to hear some thoughts. If you're on the live stream, if you want to just put in the chat some of those experiences, it's helpful for me to see where we're at. So a lot of you mentioned seller backing out, changing the deal terms, all of the above. There is no right answer here. I have seen financing issues held up deals, disagreements over working capital, or the seller backing out and changing terms. Unfortunately, with small business deals, they are very delicate, so breaking deals, unfortunately, is the nature of the beast. To the extent you can limit this, will save you time, money, and effort. So I encourage you to follow the buy box, speak with sellers, and do the process of buying the business the right way to limit some of these challenges. So what is the process, the financial diligence process, or really the acquisition process? So I highlighted initial discussions. So for those of you just starting your search or actively searching, you're still in this phase. You are actively pursuing business listings. You're probably spending nights and weekends, similar to our story, scrolling BizBuySell. or some of these other marketplaces to find your right deal that fits in your buy box. From there, you move into what is called the letter of intent. So it's an agreement that highlights the basic terms of the deal in a non-binding document, which continues in the M&A process. Really, it's a commitment by both buyer and seller that you are serious and want to purchase this business and need a certain set of exclusivity, a number of days to further analyze the business to make your ultimate decision. When it comes to letter of intents, I hold separate webinars about how to structure them, ways to think about them. My best practice is to let the letter of intent you present seriously. I compare it to a job resume. If you, it's a reflection of yourself. So do keep in mind what you present as a letter of intent is a reflection of you, the business searcher. And it does establish credibility. So I would work with an M&A attorney to make sure you get this right in terms of language. But ultimately, it is a non-binding document, but it is a key piece of the diligence phase. You then move into formal due diligence. So once the letter of intent is signed, you are granted exclusivity by the sell team over 30, 60, or 90 days. During this time, you will further inspect the business and be able to analyze private company data to better understand the business, what you're walking into, and if this business is a smart investment. Ultimately, the goal of due diligence, legal, financial, operational, is to make sure the business performance and financial data is verified compared to what is presented in the SIM or marketing materials, and the business is fairly priced and can support bank debt or what your valuation is before you submitted that LOI. You then move into a purchase agreement, which is a formal document drafted by an M&A attorney, which is really your legal binding document of the purchase price, some of the terms that are coupled with the transaction, and then you move into a formal closing period. So feel free to scan this or take a screenshot of this process and hang on to it as you do kind of navigate your business search. So what are some smart buyer priorities? So picture this. You find a business that meets your buy box. You're Thomas, you call the owner. What should you ask first? What is really important in some of those initial discussions? So I'm asked this often, and I bucketed it into four categories. The first is revenue verification. The ways to ask about revenue is understanding, is the revenue project-based? Is it recurring? What does revenue look like the last few years? And is it stable? The next is understanding, what does the cash flow look like? How long does it take to get paid by customers, and how long do you pay vendors? This speaks to what is the true cash flow of the business. Expense analysis. So understanding what are the expenses of the business, fixed, what are the variable costs, likely included in cost of goods sold? What does the ownership team look like? What are the salary expenses look like? Does the business have large marketing or advertising expenses? Just understanding what the business costs look like is a good idea in these initial discussions. And the last buyer priority is, does the business have a balance sheet? Are there assets with the company? Do they have a lot of trucks or large manufacturing on hand? Asking a business owner for a balance sheet might be a little early in the process, especially if you're not under LOI. But just speaking to questions around, do you have large machines? How old are these machines? Do you have trucks and other equipment? Have you purchased some of these large equipment recently? That will begin to frame your understanding of some of the future cash needs of this business and really if it's healthy or not. Things that come up often around asset heavy businesses are this idea that the business ownership and owner group are repairing and maintaining some very old uh, furniture, fixtures, and equipment rather than buying new ones. Purchasing these large equipment can be very expensive. So sellers who are nearing retirement or want to sell their business very likely aren't going to spend 50 or $100,000 to purchase that large piece of equipment. They'd rather repair and maintain what they currently have. It's important to understand the future capital expenditure needs of the business because that's where surprises come for many new business owners. I'll give you an example. Uh, Someone I worked with purchased a manufacturing plant and they molded plastic. They created the plastic casings for allergy medicine. The primary machine they used was very old. During due diligence, financial diligence, the sellers didn't indicate how old it was. They said it was running great. At the change of ownership, the new buyer realized this piece of equipment very likely needed to be replaced almost immediately. It effectively broke. But this equipment was, say, $25,000. It might have been more. This was an immediate cash flow hit to this new business owner. Fortunately, the business owner had a line of credit they were able to draw against. But understanding the balance sheet and what type of business you're buying is very important early on to start having these conversations around cash flow. So there's no surprises. So here are some of the new owners. Uh, and I think it's helpful again to understand context of some of these people. So Tori was a B2B technology business owner. She acquired a SaaS business that perfectly aligned with some of her long-term goals, and she's like an exceptional owner. John purchased this manufacturing company. He was a former executive. I call him a corporate refugee. And he successfully purchased a manufacturing company and has immediately been able to increase the profitability within the first year through cost-cutting initiatives as well as increased sales. Robert was a limited investor, a limited partner in a retail business, and he was able to learn some of these nuances of how to analyze businesses from an investment standpoint, which led to, his great success as that limited investor in his first endeavor. So if you want to acquire your next business, I run a small concierge business buying program where a small group of us will work together and really act as your board of directors for your acquisition. It's a program I'm very proud of because I limit it to a few entrepreneurs. If you're interested in joining or learning more, feel free to scan the QR code and you could apply today. So, what is the typical timeline for a due diligence? So, picture this, you sign your LOI and you are given 90 days exclusivity to conduct due diligence. I put together a due diligence timeline based on what you should do on days 1 through 30, 30 through 60, 60 through 90. Typically, it's best practice to kick off financial due diligence. The reason why is the sooner you can verify the presented financials, the better. Let me give you an example. If you purchase a business, you ver if you submitted a letter of intent on a prospective business, you very likely reviewed a SIM or other marketing materials, which showed the business history, what type of business is it, the financial performance, typically 10, 20, maybe 30 pages, which highlights a lot of the good of the business you're buying. The question is the financial data that shows the revenues, the costs, and the net income, those are largely unverified. They were prepared by the business broker or the ownership team itself and need to be compared against the accounting system. So they need to be this financial data needs to be rerun in the company's accounting system. So if they use QuickBooks or another accounting system, by hiring a financial due diligence provider, you can run these reports and quickly verify some of the key line items of the income statement, like revenue and expenses and net income, match what you're originally bidded on. Believe it or not, I see often discrepancies in the top line revenues reported in the SIM compared to what's showing in the accounting records. So the sooner you can start this, the better you can understand what is the actual financial performance of the business, and does this still match and jive with your perceived perception of the company when you submitted the letter of intent? If it doesn't, you've saved yourself a heck of a lot of time and likely money starting this process right away, which is why in days 1 through 30, kicking off financial diligence once you have that signed LOI is best practice.